Hey, good morning, everybody. This is Brittany with the Seniors Blue Book, and welcome to the Seniors Blue Book Live today. I'm super excited. I am with Dr. Deborah Coe Silver, who is from the Neuropsychiatric Research Center of Southwest Florida. Good morning, Dr. Silver.
Good morning, Brittany. It's so great to be here with you and to represent a group of people that I admire so much and to be able to communicate. I love meeting with your Blue Book seniors in person, and great to have this virtual meeting today.
Yeah, we've pivoted just like, I guess considering everybody has pivoted their business in a lot of different ways. And this has been such a great tool. We use Zoom Live to be able to have educational videos just like this. And this is such a perfect topic that you're going to be speaking on today, which is lifestyles to a better brain. We all can take some notes on this, no matter what age we are, right?
Right. And
So
what's so great about, lifestyles to a better brain, this has been a lifelong effort of mine to understand what keeps us strong and healthy. And my master's paper in the mid 70s, I hate to tell you, I'm 69, by the way, was on the psychological effects of exercise. And it led me on this path. I also had the good fortune of being in Southern California and meeting wonderful people from Loma Linda. And as you know, they're part of that group, one of those special groups that we have of our blue zones. And they really taught me what this first screen, I hope everybody's seeing from this PowerPoint presentation, it's giving you a hint about what we all should be thinking about. And they were the ones who really alerted me, Debbie, if you want to protect your brain, you better start by changing the way you eat and the way you live. And I really did pay attention, and happy to say, knock wood, that I'm still running 20 miles a week ever since the mid 70s. So today I'd love to introduce your audience to what can we do to stay healthy through the course of our life. And I want to start with telling you about the Neuropsychiatric Research Center of Southwest Florida. I don't know if many of the folks in your audience know, but Dr. Fred Sheriff, may he rest in peace. He passed away a couple years ago of Lou Gehrig's ALS disease. And he and his wife, someone I cherish, Melissa Sheriff, in 2001 started the Neuropsychiatric Research Center. And why is this so, why am I so excited about this? Because I watched from afar when they first came to town. My husband and I had the largest psychology practice from 1978 on. And the sheriffs became our go-to folks because Dr. Sheriff, he was a Johns Hopkins trained psychiatrist. He was involved in really understanding the most innovative treatments to assist folks who were struggling with all manner of psychological issues. And he was the one who really got into, wow, we need to do some work here locally to understand what's going on. So he started cutting edge clinical research projects. And part of this has been the sheriff's commitment to community outreach. And when he asked me about 5 years ago, Deb, I know you and your husband sold your practice, you have a non-compete. Why don't you come work for us and get involved in research? I know you're interested about this. And I said, yes. And then when he invited me to be part of the educational team, I was so grateful. But I'm giving you like another advance, notice thing. When I talk about the Neuropsychiatric Research Center, I want you to understand that everything we do here, there's no cost to folks who come in and visit with us. And what I hope is that many folks in your audience will listen to what I'm saying about the value of research and know that we really offer so many free services. In fact, only 1 out of 10 folks who come to visit us end up in a study. Most of the time, we're referring people to all of our other community resources like Blue Book. And, when people come in, often they'll ask us, gee, am I having a normal change in my cognitive function? Is this normal for my age, or is this something that I should be worried about? And on this slide, it gives a lot of particulars that you might want to keep in mind. You know, when we every once in a while forget a name of someone who's relatively new in our life that we met, you know, that's absolutely expected, not something to get too concerned about. But if we start to forget the names of a really close friend or one of our family members, that's the time to get concerned. You know, of course, if you are experiencing forgetting the name of an acquaintance, it still is a great thing to come and, as we'll talk about in a little bit, have a baseline just to find out, where are you functioning cognitive wise right now? But if your folks can take a look at this chart and say, okay, if I forgot an appointment, maybe I'm not, you know, so concerned, that's expected. But if I'm not able to tell the time, that's the time to get concerned. Or if I have a hard time learning a new word, maybe that's absolutely to be expected for my age. But if I'm having an inability to write that word or to use a very familiar word, that would be when I would be concerned. When we look at healthy aging, this chart really shows that it's a long-term process. And Brittany, I know you and I talked yesterday about, even though you are a youthful person, already you notice some changes, and absolutely normal. And when you look at this chart, you see from birth through 40, 50, you know, that we kind of buzz along with a certain level of capability. And then it's normal. That yellow line shows that healthy aging, a slow course of dropping off, where we start to get concerned through 50, 60, when we see more of a sudden drop off. That's when we start to say, uh-oh, we better think about discovering what's going on here. It may not be Alzheimer's disease. It could be a lot of other things, but it's time to get a checkup. This chart shows that the kind of brain pathology, what we call amyloid plaques and the tau tangles, that they rise from an early age in a slow process, creating the kind of disease process we see in something related to a dementia. So again, it's a slow process, and you want to be aware of it. You want to be tracking it. You want to be doing everything in your power to control the modifiable risk factors that we're going to talk about in a moment. When we look at statistics, we know that age is the greatest factor that alerts us that we might have some kind of dementing process. And in 2013, about 14% of the population had Alzheimer's. And when you look at that 44.7 million in 2030, it's going to be 70 million, it's projected. And then by 2060, almost 22% of the population will be diagnosed. Now, we know in Southwest Florida, because we do, you know, we've been so lucky to have so many of us seniors here, that we're ground zero for this ravaging disease. This slide shows the effects of Alzheimer's on the brain. And as we were talking earlier, I am such a visual person that, you know, this picture really got to me. When you look at the left side, you see a healthy brain, and it points out that the hippocampus area is really key to forming new memories. And you see on the disease side on the right, there's some big changes occurring with actual shrinkage of the brain and impacting those areas of the brain that affect our ability to create new memories. When we look at the cost, it isn't just the emotional, social cost, it is psychological cost, it's also the financial cost. And if we don't do some things here, like first of all, taking responsibility and doing what we can to preserve brain function, that we are going to overwhelm our healthcare system. When we look at who's so impacted, women are. When you think about how so many women, this slide really goes into that. Whoops, I just zipped past that. Bottom line is, women are caretakers. Because we're caretakers, we're at a far greater risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. And We also have to be mindful of the importance of self-care through that process. When we look at the facts and figures, this slide really shows what an important healthcare issue, sixth leading cause of death in the United States. So it's something that we have to give our full attention to. And when you think about how the estimated number of people with Alzheimer's disease, about, it's a little over 50,000. And by 2025 in Florida, that increase is going to go up 28.6%. So it's a big issue. Now, a lot of folks who come see us at the research center, they may have other issues. They may look like they have Alzheimer's, but maybe there was some kind of brain injury. Maybe there's a tumor. Maybe there's an impact of use of a lot of alcohol over the course of their life. Maybe there's something happening metabolically. Boy, I can't tell you how often Dr. Bond and Dr. Springer, this is the thing. They're here to meet with folks, and they give a careful attention to health history. How often they identify issues like, hey, it is a vitamin B12 issue, or maybe it's something called normal pressure hydrocephalus, which can be treated. Maybe it's a medication the person's taking that makes it look like they have Alzheimer's. So it's important when we think about that, there are a lot of ways to prevent things that look like Alzheimer's that are not. And primary prevention involves taking a look at what are we eating, how active are we, what is our stress level, what is our psychological well-being, knowing that 15 years between the start of these biological changes in the brain and what we call mild cognitive impairment, MCI, that starts well before we start to really notice the effects of it. So you've got so many years, even as a young person, to preserve your brain. When we look at, well, what can we do as far as brain health? And we start by taking a look at where are we functioning on a brain's cognitive measure. Get a baseline. Come here. We'll give you a baseline by administering some screening instruments. Take a look medically at, do you have sleep apnea? If so, looks like Alzheimer's, but it's not. And it's well treated, and people rebound so quickly when they are able to get that sleep apnea treated. Treat any modifiable risk factor aggressively. Take a look at your medications, your hearing. We're going to take a look at some of these in more focus. Look at what you're eating, your exercise. If you drink alcohol, moderation, and then manage your relationships and your mood. Very important. You want to protect your head. You want to do the things that actually support your health in cognitive health, listening to music, remaining cognitively active. That's what I'm doing here. Love and live, very, very important. One thing that Dr. Sheriff always used to say, it's so important, those relationships we embrace and to make sure we treasure them as much as we can, which I know is hard with COVID now. Also just slipped through one of the slides here. Let me get that one back if I can. Make sure that we are managing hypertension, diabetes, heart disease, making sure that we are more active, not sitting around watching television so much, sleeping and managing stress. This slide is really a great one that talks about the importance of where are we gathering fat? Is it in our abdomen? Because that's an issue. And we look at when we have a lot of carbohydrates that we increase our risk for Alzheimer's disease by 89%. And fat-rich diets, we reduce our risk according to the Mayo study. So it's important to really consider what we're eating. And, also that the food choices, why is gluten-free for some folks really important if you've got an issue managing it, because we don't want to create more inflammation in our bodies, especially impacting the brain. When we look at, well, what's good for you, the wonderful foods that the Mediterranean diet has, and that heart diet, that DASH diet, that what's good for your heart is really good for your brain. And these kinds of bright colored berries and vegetables and nuts are so good for promoting health. Think about those omega-3 fatty acids, and you can get them in all of these different types of foods. When you think about, well, how does this physical activity, how does that really help? Well, it changes our brain. It increases these positive neurotransmitters. And when we think about that hippocampus, they're looking now that it actually seems to stimulate that area of the brain where we form memories. I'll tell you, after a good long 7-mile run, things are really popping in my brain so much more efficiently. When you think about, there may be actual blood factors that are involved with exercise, and all of those neurochemical transmitters, these dopamine, serotonin, that they impact these all by exercise. Along with it, helps with mood too. When you look at, what are some ways that we can really stimulate our memory and learning new things. That's why it's so great you've got this series, Brittany, because people are coming in and learning so much from you. Sleeping, making sure you get that, well, here it says 6 hours, and I keep hearing it's more like 7 or 8, as much as you can. That's when we form memory consolidation, it's called. Eating those foods and challenging and training your brain and enjoying company with your friends and meditating. Boy, I had a gentleman say to me just this past week, since he's in his early 50s, he started meditating. He says, I can't believe how much that helps for promoting my attention span. Those things really make a difference. When you look at smoking, sorry for this disturbing picture, but that really does impact the brain, and we want to modify that risk factor as much as possible, knowing we're giving a real treat to our brain by not doing it. It affects things like blood pressure, and blood pressure, getting that down really does preserve brain function. When we look at alcohol, same thing. Alcohol's a neurotoxin, as Dr. Sheriff used to say, and limit your consumption. If you don't drink, don't start. There are some other ways that it affects the brain. A really serious, significant alcohol use affects our ability to use nutrients that we're trying to take in. So keep that one in mind as well. Another thing that Dr. Bond and Dr. Springer often find in folks who come to visit us are hearing issues. And when I saw the impact of what happens with hearing loss, when you look at Frank Lynn, wonderful researcher at Johns Hopkins, and when he noted, if you don't treat a hearing loss, you'll lose 1 centimeter of a cubic centimeter of brain tissue each year, and how it affects. And, when we can hear things properly, we can really stimulate our brain properly. When we think about dental health is so important. And when you look at the periodontal disease, making sure you take care of your oral health and get your annual checkups, or, go even more often if you have an issue. When you take a look at that risk factor and how, oral health impacts all these different organ systems, and that related to the increase in Alzheimer's disease. One of the studies we have here at the research center is addressing that issue and really taking a look at what happens if gum disease is allowed to continue. It will impact areas of the brain and cause inflammation to the brain. So we're taking a look at medication investigational drug right now to see if that's a thing that might help. When we look at how that pathology occurs, this slide really shows how having that kind of bacteria in our mouth really ends up in our brain and wreaks havoc. When we think about risky behaviors, it's good to be active, but make sure you use your protective equipment. One thing that people will come and ask us about when they visit us is, wow, I notice I'm not as happy as I used to be, and I seem more fearful. One thing to keep in mind, Dr. Sheriff used to try to reassure folks to say that's a normal part of age, and we do want to monitor some symptoms, though, to make sure that if you become depressed, that that's treated as well. Music in the brain. I hope all the folks who are on watching today play some wonderful music. It stimulates your brain in a way that nothing else does, impacting all of these areas of the brain and lighting up that whole brain and giving you an extra boost when it comes to preservation of cognitive function. Remaining connected in the world here, becoming, really engaged in your community. I know that's hard, but, Brittany, as you're doing, figuring out these virtual ways that we still can be connected with each other and enjoy meaningful relationships. When we're able to manage COVID and have vaccines that really help us getting back to volunteering in ways other than virtual ways, continuing education classes. Thank you, Brittany, and thank you, Senior Blue Book, for what you're doing here, because you are making sure we all stay up to date. So if this is the end of the formal presentation, I think it's good that you understand these are all of the folks who support the Neuropsychiatric Research Center, and that we have many different options for study. We have one that's headed toward FDA approval we're really excited about, and we've been working on for, I think, about 7 years, maybe 8 years now, and that it is a game changer because rather than just treating symptoms, that what we're looking to do is actually reverse that process of the exposure to tau and also to amyloid. And that's what this research is about, really treating the underlying condition rather than just addressing symptoms. So, Brittany, any questions or any other issues we should be talking about today?
I think you did such a fantastic job of really covering in the amount of time you did. Number one, that was amazing. And it was so clear. And I think there's several different, ideas or things that some of us may have heard, in one ear and out the other that can truly improve our quality of life. Number one, you talked about a lot of things like helping with depression and even simple things like listening to music. I know for me, sometimes I'll forget to turn on my music when I'm doing my, working from home stuff. And as soon as I remember to do that, it just automatically brightens my mood. And it actually helps productivity. And like you said, kind of sparks the brain. And just all the things you hit on, honestly, are perfect for our listeners. No matter what age you are, you can be proactive in your health and really get on top of some of these things that'll ultimately help in so many different, facets of your life. So I appreciate all the information you shared.
That's really important to highlight, Brittany, because I think so many people feel like, well, what can I do? I'm at the mercy of this awful disease. And I'm here to tell you, there's so much that you can do. First, don't jump to conclusions that you have Alzheimer's. Come here, we'll guide you. No cost. We'll direct you to community resources. We'll get you a baseline. We'll encourage you to understand what are your particular risk factors. I was so impressed when I saw the careful kind of review that Dr. Bond and Dr. Springer do when they meet with a person and really go through health history and then redirect them to do things like, okay, we can take some, it's amazing. These small steps produce big results over time. And the research is so clear. You look at those communities like the Mediterranean data, when you look at Loma Linda, when you look at Okinawa, you look across the world, even now, I guess Naples has a blue zone. You know, really looking to adopt that lifestyle that we know that those folks go into their 90s and never show any issue with cognitive decline. So embrace what those folks are doing, mainly a plant-based diet. I know I have a hamburger every once in a while and I really love it, but you know, it's not an everyday event. It's not an every week event. And I realize, you know, sticking to a plant-based diet is really important. And, you know, those things do add up. And you don't have to run, you know, 20 miles a week. You know, just being more active. You know, when you go to the grocery store, park away, you know, make sure you got your mask on, you got your gloves on, and park far away and get a little walk on, you know, just be more physically active, really monitor, study yourself. Am I spending too much time just sitting? Can I do something standing up? Can I do it moving? And you're right about the music. You play music and you're going to be more invigorated. And you'll see how much more productive, like you talked about, you really can be.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you so much for spending your precious time with us this morning. We, as myself, and again, everybody watching, tuning in, has really appreciated all the tips and can come back to this video and use this as a tool for yourself.
That's great. Here's another thing, Brittany. I'd be happy to come back and talk about what we call the recent advances in understanding Alzheimer's that, you know, I kind of alluded to it when I talked about a couple of our studies that we're really taking a look at what may really be ultimately the way to address Alzheimer's disease. And I took a wonderful training with a professor emeritus from Emory University, Dr. Zola. And he spent the whole day with us going through, well, what's everything that we know about this? And it was so gratifying that at the end of, I think it was at least 6 to 8 hours, at the end of this training, and he, by the way, is, I think, about in his 8th decade of life, and he was very, very animated, as super presenter. At the end, he said, I want everybody out, and there were over 100 of us in this audience. I want every one of you in this audience to somehow get involved with research, because there's really great research to say people who are involved in some way, whether they are, like I am, a rater, investigator, supporter, person, whether they are participating, whether they are a caregiver with someone who's involved in a study, you're automatically connected to, like, fingers on the pulse. You're able to connect with the latest information that we know about Alzheimer's.
Absolutely. I honestly feel like this should be a tool, a video for people to, like I said, come back to and really learn from, and to share, because on social media, it's so easy to share it on their page or share it with their friends or neighbors or family. Because obviously ourselves, we are important, but those that we care about, we put them first most of the time, right?
Yes, ma'am. We sure do. You're
so thank you so much for joining us. I'll put all the information of how to contact you and how to get the process started if somebody is interested in getting, you know, some testing done or some information. So thank you so much, Dr. Silver.
Can't wait to meet all your friends.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
You too. Bye.